Since I was a kid, I've always dreamed of being a president, and it just so happened that I didn't become one yet. But today we will see if I will do a great job in the future by using principles of a Chinese dictator Mao Zedong and his debut propaganda book titled Little Red Book that was kinda controversial, but let's not judge it by its cover. To immerse myself deeper into this dictator experience, I had to create someone who would resemble me in real life, and despite such a small amount of available options, it didn't stop me from creating my doppelganger. And now, that's what we have to start with to eventually turn it into something great. After taking a proud walk around my estate, I noticed a serious issue that I could not ignore. On one side, we had homeless people building these aesthetically unpleasing shacks, and on the other, we had people who could afford to buy single-family houses and live carefree. Needless to say, Mao would not appreciate this class division. At no time and in no circumstances should a communist place his personal interest first. So to encourage equality, I bulldozed every single one of these houses and made everyone homeless. But people couldn't appreciate the communist spirit yet, so my approval rating dropped from 70 to 13% in less than a minute. Clearly these people are spoiled and have too much free time in their lives to question my politics. But in that case, the best thing I could do is to send them to live and work in countryside. According to Mao, the countryside is a place that purifies the mind of educational corruption and cures an elitist mindset. While looking at my plantation, you might think to yourself, wow, Castle, that's very impressive. Thank you, but let's focus on things that actually matter. It's lore accurate. For a dictator, Mao is surprisingly considerate, so he organized his cities around danways, or if by any chance you don't speak Chinese, work units, which basically meant that you had work, apartment, clinic and school all within walking distance. With that being said, meanwhile my peasants were slowly building my glorious plantation, I as a president was working hard as well, planning my local Tiananmen Square, which in future will become one of the most important pieces of our state. But for now, we're just selling propaganda newspapers. As my people started finishing more and more plantations, my approval rating was steadily increasing, which means Mao was right about re-educating educated people. Eventually, our plantation looked glorious. Not only we were growing all types of resources, ranging from corn to tobacco, we also had a place for extremely intellectual and elitist people who were sent to farm cow poop and think about their non-communistic behavior. To make my residential area even more lore accurate, I needed to fit as many people as I could in one building. In the game you can fit 8 people in the 2-story building, which in my opinion is very generous, because I could easily fit 20 more. And just like Mao, I also provided housing for free. At one point I started to doubt if I'm actually a dictator, because I've been doing nothing but nice things. And just before I finished building my military fort, my state was subjected to a foreign invasion attack from people who were envious of our progress. So I had to use my last $2,000 from treasury to prevent my investment in a communist future from being destroyed. And after saving my plantations, things only got worse. We were actively losing money by paying $9,000 in wages for plantations and exporting goods from plantations for $5,000. The most logical solution to our economic dilemma would be to stop paying wages in general, and that's what Mao did as well. But unfortunately for now we don't have that luxury, so we have to deal with unnecessary spendings. Not only that, but my presidential time was also running out and I didn't get the approval of revolutionaries. So when some capitalist state offered me to build a logging camp in exchange to increase my presidential time, with a communist tear coming from my eye, I had to agree. Meanwhile, it was a difficult decision to make, such as life, and sometimes you just have to bend over and forget that it ever happened. Even Mao was not an exception to that rule either, because for decades he thought of the US as an enemy, but then invited Nixon to hang out in Beijing. After a couple more years, none of our problems had been resolved, and in a way people didn't love me as much as I'd hoped for. So to get on their good side, I built a tavern right next to the peasant residential area. At first I had doubts about it, but when one of the first visitors was a 4-year-old Maria Brower, I realized that 100% approval rating was only a matter of time. And just as I thought, after some time my people still didn't like me, but at least now we had revolutionaries in our country and we were able to declare war on capitalism to become an independent state. The crowd didn't like that, so we had to engage in a couple of high-stakes battles in my territory, but nothing that my communistic demons weren't able to deal with. And meanwhile I was waging a war. Apparently my support level had hit the lowest low of 0%. The only thing that made it better is the fact that it couldn't get lower than that. Now that we entered the new age, our political options open up much more to create a country that aligns with Mao's vision. But first come the pillars of communism that allow everyone to vote, and they turn all of our people into potential soldiers in case something goes wrong. Before I could get into my highly important presidential deeds, this suspiciously looking religious woman asked me to fulfill a demand for a religious faction, but after destroying thousands of churches and saying that religion is poison, it's safe to say Mao was a little bit of an atheist when it came to that. So I politely declined. At that point I was a little bit sad because I was not sure why people were unhappy, but I figured if I cannot control how much people like me, I can control how much they work and where. So now it was the perfect time to start moving towards industrialization and revolution. In 1958, Mao launched the Great Leap Forward campaign that was supposed to turn China from an agrarian country into an industrial giant. Accidentally, it led to millions of people starving to death, but people make mistakes all the time. The main strat was called walking on two legs, that relied on making people work in both agriculture and industry simultaneously. So to start, I built a cigarette factory within the walking distance of my peasants, and now it could turn tobacco that we were growing into potential gold. The first workers to arrive were so excited to work here that they morphed through the wall just to make the first batch of cigarettes. Despite my people being unhappy with the healthcare, I think my clinic looked pretty nice and relatively safe for the customers, so I'm not really sure where that low rating is coming from as well. Since we couldn't allow our people to own anything, I built a grocery store, and now the rules were simple: you work, you eat. To be 100% lore accurate, ideally we would ban all of the private cooking, but unfortunately there is no such option. Needless to say, my countryside was looking phenomenal, but now it was about time we create an industrial city with an average lifespan of 30 years. Since our people are not allowed to own cars, I built a bus station and a couple of apartment buildings. It didn't look very oppressive yet, but if we apply black and white tint, then everything starts to make sense. To say that my people were stupid would be an understatement, so to fix that, I also built a library. It might seem like Mao was against education, but really, he was against too much education that would separate you from the working class. But since there's nothing else to do in our state but work, that shouldn't be a problem. Eventually people demanded an election, and it couldn't have happened in a worse time, because my approval rating was 16%. But as a true president, I decided to give an inspiring speech that would hopefully help me win more votes. I praised communists, blamed American capitalists, and promised more fun to people. Obviously I was not planning to come through on any of my promises, but if that will help me to win upcoming elections and be president for the next 5 years, that's all that matters. And just like that, our campaign was a total success. To increase my approval rating from peasants in the countryside, I decided to build a mini Tiananmen Square with propaganda newspapers and a cheap outside gym. Mao believed that your body was a tool for revolution, and he viewed sport as a way to prepare people for hard labor and war. He even said, if the body is made savage, then the civilized mind will follow. I also built one on my main square and people loved it, except for this woman who hated exercising, but I instantly arrested her for being a capitalist. But unfortunately, all of my efforts were not enough, so I had to use one of the oldest tricks in the book and rig the elections ever so slightly. And it turns out that there were much more people who loved me than I had previously thought, so that was a nice surprise. Another surprise was waiting for these peasants whose apartment building was burning. And despite me not having money to build a fire station, I believe problems like this leave no room for hesitation, so I demolished the building as a whole, and now these people will think twice about cooking without my approval. Instantly after the election, according to the lore, I decided to turn my state atheist and destroy all the churches just like Mao. I believe the only thing that my people should believe in is me. The next step of our great leap forward was to make our city and educated people actually useful. So I built mines in a steel factory in close vicinity to our residential buildings to create our industrial Danwei. Since we appreciate hardworking people, I changed the work mode for mines from almost human protocol to profit protocol to double the amount of shifts my people have to work. It says that it's gonna decrease job quality by 10, but I always thought that quality is subjective anyway. I also noticed the first protest next to the dungeon. Apparently people didn't like me destroying the church, but since now this is an atheist state, God won't mind us sending a military to figure it out. Now it was time for the next upcoming election. As usual, I praised communism and blamed capitalism for all of our issues. This time I couldn't promise anything because I didn't deliver on it previously, but after my speech, our chances didn't look that bad. Perhaps for the first time we have a chance to win these elections without rigging them. Now that my steel production factory was successfully paying off, the next logical step was to start producing weapons. As a true leader, I put my weapons factory right next to the residential district, both minimizing travel time and maximizing sulfur dioxide exposure to to strengthen the body of our people. To increase the support rating, I also had to build a newspaper office to print something nice about me on a daily basis. But even though chances look good, I could not entrust my presidential term to these uneducated people, so I had to readjust the ballots myself to be sure of a fair outcome. Right after smashing these elections, to prove people that I was the right choice, I released a new labor policy that would legalize child labor and that would make sure that people cannot ever retire. That was also the first time that I have noticed a rich citizen who could afford to own a car. At first I was not sure how that was even possible, but then I remembered how 17 years ago his dad assaulted a woman next to the clinic, and all of a sudden it made more sense. Unfortunately for now we can't do anything about it, but I will make sure to take care of this elitist behavior in the future. But what I could do is to control the consumption of alcohol and destroy the tavern to increase productivity. It's at that moment I realized that I created something much stronger than communism, because the only thing that my people cared about is to not be late at work. Eventually, one of the engines of our economy was under attack by 4 shirtless men and 1 woman, and that just seemed weird because why is she not following the dress code? Even though I defended my cigarette factory, I could not allow myself to repeat such mistakes in the future, so I had to build an oppressive-looking guard tower that would shoot anyone who shows off their chest. Eventually people started to realize that dictatorship is not even that bad, so for the next elections people decided to vote for me as my presidential campaign to reciprocate all the love. I decided to build them a coal power plant, and since it would decrease the lifespan of people who live nearby by approximately 2 times, to offset the unconventional side effects, I also employed a new policy that would double the amount of shifts people are required to work. If there is any president who can solve 2 serious issues with 1 confident decision, then it's only me. There were some minorities who didn't like it, so as a president, I'd listen to their criticism and send them to the gulag, and thankfully they didn't have to go far. After applying all these new policies, my people started to generate a reasonably good income that of course went to the state, aka me, and not surprisingly 60% of people were ready to give me their vote in the next elections. It made me very proud that people finally started to see the benefits of dictatorship. But now that we were doing great, some of my people managed to get into the middle class and disrupt equality, which we cannot allow to happen. So it was absolutely necessary to issue tax on wealth in order for people to think twice about getting out of the low class. In Mao's era, the envoys were under constant surveillance, so to keep it lore accurate, I put a watchtower in the middle of residential buildings. But to not make it too suspicious, I employed a regular-looking woman to make it seem like it's an Eiffel Tower and not a military object. But what happened next shocked me. I met Finn, who 30 years ago assaulted a woman in front of the clinic and whom I arrested. Time doesn't spare anybody, so now he's old and with back problems. Without a doubt it was a good call to ban retirement, because people like this do not deserve it. Looking at my prison, I was pleasantly surprised to see how clean and well taken care of this place is. That just goes to show that even despite these people being enemies of our state, regardless, I treat them with respect. Hopefully they will turn to communists before they die. Finn was a little patriot. Despite being 86 and living next to a coal power plant, his willpower to live in my country made him ignore the average lifespan whatsoever, which I can't say the same about this old lady, whom I arrested for being a rebel, because right after getting to prison, justice took its turn in real time, and she had a heart attack while another woman was enjoying it. And now, we advance to the next stage of our progress, where we can solidify our dictatorship. So I start with putting my statue in the middle of the square. Now, people will be constantly reminded about all of the good things that I did to bring this country to its glory. But to make sure that people really look at me when they go to work and come back, I decided to build a metro station with an exit pointing right at me. I feel like it was not enough, so I put down a couple of billboards with my face so people wouldn't miss me. It was only natural that our next step would be to create a nuclear bomb and show everyone how great our country truly is. But according to Mao, building more factories on the main island would make us vulnerable to invasions and bombings. So instead, I followed his advice of close to mountains, dispersed and hidden, by building a nuclear power plant on another island and surrounding it with uneducated peasants and plantations. Now, instead of looking like a military object, it looks like a future environmental catastrophe that our enemies will think twice about bombing. And as someone who cares about my people, I also built new apartment buildings that were taller, could fit more people inside, and that could have electricity. But since my people are living at work, that would be a waste of energy. After winning the next elections, I decided to thank my people for all the support by issuing a couple of constitutional changes. Since my citizens loved me so much, I decided to ban them from leaving our island, and it was only logical to control all of the media, so now they could wake up and go to sleep listening to my voice. Eventually I was shocked to discover that behind my back 44 people were planning a rebellion against me, but now they're gonna be planning it in front of my face. We were also attacked by capitalists, and unfortunately I had to roll out a tank that was supposed to stay secret in case my people rebel, but that was a good testing ground, and despite our state being atheist, I think I witnessed a miracle. For some reason things were not looking good. More and more rebels had started to appear throughout the entire island, and at this point, I was not sure who could I trust or what I could do. My approval rating was dropping, and as someone who likes to fix problems from the root, arresting them just felt useless. At this point I was not really sure if I could win the next elections, so I had to use all of the possible propaganda channels at my disposal. I made theories to set plays about my heroic achievements, I forced radio stations, TV stations to talk only about me and communism, and I even built a movie theater to show movies about me. But that was still not enough, so I had to recalculate ballots myself. And even though I won, this victory showed me that despite my efforts, capitalism was spreading throughout my nation like a disease. To show people who they're messing with, I decided to launch a nuclear program and started building my first nuke. So in the case of an uprising, I will take the capitalist ideas with me. Apparently by launching my first nuclear bomb on some random country, it had shown people who truly is the president. And now we were in the modern era. And since my last election was not as smooth as I had hoped for, I made sure to set up a total surveillance over my people to prevent any other incidents in the future. Despite my constant progress and me doing everything for the people, my state was going through a new rebel attack on a daily basis, and my modern times approval rating was not looking good. There comes a point when you realize that maybe my true supporters like Finn are long gone because of the sulfur dioxide poisoning from the coal power plant in the middle of the city that I built, and maybe this new generation wants a new president with new and different values that would lead them to a different and exciting future. But in that case, I had no other choice but to activate martial law, and now we don't have to worry about any of that, because there will never be another election ever again. To be honest with you, there will never be anything
but me.